and mighty legs shall long enjoy the work of their hands. They shall not labor in vain, nor bring forth for trouble, for they are the seed of the blessed of the Lord, and their offspring with them. And it shall come to pass that before they call, I will answer. While they are yet speaking, I will hear. The wolf and the lamb shall feed together. The lion shall eat straw like an ox, and dust shall be the serpent's meat. They shall not hurt nor destroy in all my holy mountain.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. We are continuing our study in the book of Isaiah today. Sorry, we're having I don't know if it's my internet or just the internet, but difficulty with the streaming starting this morning, but everything seems to be functional now. All right, let's we're starting with verse 6, but let's just read it again. I like reading the whole chapter. I think we're going to do that for a while. Let's get a nice fresh sample. Come near, ye nations, to hear, and hearken, ye people. Let the earth hear, and all that is therein, the world, and all things that come forth of it. For the indignation of the Lord is upon all nations, and his fury is upon all their armies. He hath utterly destroyed them. He hath delivered them to the slaughter. Their slain also shall be cast out, and their stink shall come up out of their carcasses. And the mountains shall be melted with their blood, and all the host of heaven shall be dissolved, and the heavens shall be rolled together as a scroll, and all their hosts shall fall down, as the leaf falleth off from the vine, and as a falling fig from the fig tree. For my sword shall be bathed in heaven. Behold, it shall come down upon Idumea, and upon the people of my curse, to judgment. The sword of the Lord is filled with blood. It is made fat with fatness, and with the blood of lambs and goats, with the fat of kidneys of rams. For the Lord hath a sacrifice in Bozrah, and a great slaughter in the land of Dumia. And the unicorns shall come down with them, and the bullocks with the bulls, and their land shall be soaked with blood, and their dust made fat with fatness. For it is the day of the Lord's vengeance, and the year of recompenses of the controversy of Zion, for the controversy of Zion. And the streams thereof shall be turned into pitch, and the dust thereof into brimstone, and the land thereof shall become burning pitch. It shall not be quenched night nor day. The smoke thereof shall go up forever. From generation to generation it shall lie waste. None shall pass through it forever and ever. Dwell in it, and he shall stretch upon it the line of confusion and the stones of emptiness. And they shall call the nobles thereof to the kingdom, but none shall be there. And all her princes shall be nothing. Shall be an habitation of dragons, and a court for owls. The wild beasts of the desert shall also meet with the wild beasts of the island, and the satyr shall cry to his fellow. The screech owl also shall rest there, and find for herself a place of rest. There shall the great owl make her nest, and lay, and hatch, and gather under her shadow. There shall the vultures also be gathered, every one with her mate. Seek ye out of the book of the Lord, and read. No one of these shall fail, none shall want her mate. For my mouth it hath commanded, and his spirit it hath gathered them. And he hath cast the lot for them, and his hand hath divided it unto them by line. They shall possess it forever. From generation to generation shall they dwell therein. So we talked about, first of all, there's another example I would say, hey, people like, hey, where's America in prophecy? Here, all nations. Whenever you talk about all nations, you can figure you can count yourself in. You know what I mean? Because ultimately, all nations fall short of God's glory. God's kingdom is going to be, the kingdoms of this world are become the kingdoms of our Lord. They're not going to be like the United States of heaven. It's just not going to work. That's not to say, anyone who knows or follows me knows it's like I consider my duty to my country and my republic to be clear. But like, that's independent on some level of my higher commitment to God's kingdom, of course. In fact, part of the way I approach my thoughts on what are my obligations is in terms of God's kingdom. It's like, just like things like the Good Samaritan or a lot of the parables Jesus taught, or he shows that, we are meant to act on our faith, and that those who just say they have faith and hide it in the earth, meaning it's buried in their life, basically, that person is, that's not a good thing to do. All the parables, that it turns out bad for that person. That's where they something about fire and cast them out, and Idumea and Edom being Esau, the descendants of Esau, and that's why you can understand the idea of the people of my curse. Or, we could try to understand that concept. We talked about it a great deal last time. Remember in Romans chapter 8 and 9, we were actually in 9. But, where it talks about Esau's, the fact that Jacob have I loved, Esau have I hated. And this is according to the purpose and election of God. Not that God has no reason to hate someone and just decides to hate them. No, he has reason to hate everybody. He has reason to hate everybody. That's how we're all equal. And that's when the way God is totally fair, because we're all hateful. But instead, he has chosen to love us. He looked upon man in his pitiful and degraded and abominable state, and in his grace and mercy pardons us, but not all. That's the kicker. Because you know why? As we also judge, do we not also judge that some men are not worthy of redemption? Do we not judge that some men are so terrible that we reserve to them the most horrible punishments we can think of, which death? Complete, we cut them off. We know, here's the thing, even though some of us may oppose the death penalty, it is probably not for reasons that we think that they don't deserve it. They deserve it. They deserve to die for the things they have done, many people, right? We believe this. And by that admission, if you admit that you believe that some people deserve to do such bad things, then there is a line beyond what you think. No, there shouldn't be grace and redemption for someone like that. But be careful, lest you also be judged by the same standard. That's what Jesus said. Judge not that you be not judged. Because the judgment you judge, you're judged by. Meaning, if I think murderers are worthy of death, then if I do murder, I'm worthy of death. I've already condemned myself. And it goes like that with everything. And that's what that concept talks about. But being under God's curse means that they have been rejected in terms of election. They are not chosen of God. Just like Jacob and Esau. He chose Jacob, not Esau. Though Esau was firstborn. All the externalities. Look, he was a big, strong, burly man. His father's favorite. He was firstborn. But God chose Jacob. Because God does not always choose by the outward appearance. God is no respecter of persons. That's the externalities of things, deep down inside. The parts you think you hide from everyone, or people think they hide from everyone. I doubt anyone who's listening to this is going to be chastised by those words. But see, people do, they hide. They say, who sees us? Who knows us? Isaiah talked about that, right? And so, as Esau has come under judgment, but this is not just I would be, I think, truly, it would be wrong to just think only in terms of Esau. This is for Esau, because I tell you what, the authors of the New Testament did not think this was just for Esau. And even this chapter seems to say this is not just for Esau, it's for all nations. Why is it all nations? Because Esau is an example of a nation that has cursed itself in the sight of God. Not just that Esau himself was cursed, because the scriptures are clear that the children do not pay for the sins of their parents if they turn from their parents' sins. And that's actually not entirely an easy thing. It can, it's a weird thing. I don't know exactly how it works, because in every family it's different. Because sometimes parents try really hard to get their kids to go a certain way, and they go the opposite way. But sometimes they try to get them to go a certain way, and they go along with it, And it could be for bad or good. It could be they're pushing them hard in a good direction, right? And the kids, they go along with it, and they do what their parents say, all right? Or they push them really hard or sometimes they say like, well, no, I'm going to go in a different direction because I don't want what you want from me, even though you think it's good. Maybe the child obviously maybe thinks it isn't, or maybe they don't care. But there's a lot of possibilities there. But also they may not intend evil, but sort of do, or push them in a direction that's not so good. I don't know what that. Well, there are parents that push their kids in a bad direction by being bad parents. Like not being married, like not by being. Well, when you're not married and then not having time to actually raise the child because you're so busy with everything else in your own life, you leave it up to schools to nurture and raise your children. And children that are left like that are very, they need attention at home. But the point is, we don't know why. But sometimes when your parents teach you things, you don't do them. It's so funny. I honestly, I laugh at that because I think you ask kids, why'd you do that? And I don't ask them why, because I never ask a question that I don't know the answer myself. Why'd you do? I don't need to. Sometimes I look at things. I don't need to ask why. I know it's because there are. But to scrap that and go back to this idea of the nations, right? Well, the children are not held responsible for the parents' sins. Meaning if like some generation, like Esau displeases God, that doesn't mean his children are also under God's curse. But inasmuch as they continue to be like Esau, profane persons that despise their inheritance and are rejected of, in as much as they continue in the same sins that was of the people who are cursed. When you do the things the cursed people do, you are a cursed people. When we do things in our society and we allow things to happen and we proceed down a certain path, we become cursed as well. The nation itself becomes cursed. And so then it talks a lot here about the sword of the Lord. Filled with blood, it is made fat with fatness for the blood of lambs, goats, the fat of kidneys of rams. It's because he is a sacrifice in Basra. Basra being one of the chief either cities or regions of Edom. And we connected that already to Isaiah chapter 63, where it says, "Who is this that cometh from Edom with dyed garments from Basra?" And that's a very clear connection, because sometimes Idumea. In the English, I'm not going to cross-reference all the whether Idumea is the same thing in Hebrew as Edom. It doesn't matter because it's like the connection's already made. We don't need to go to that depth. I mean, you can very well do it yourself. It's not a particularly difficult thing to confirm. The thing is, I used to go and confirm things like that, but then 10 years later when I'm back in Isaiah, I don't remember if I confirm. I just remember the facts. So it's like confirming the exact, that's for people who are true textual scholars, and the unicorns shall come down with it. Now we have to look that word because definitely not unicorn. I always want the unicorn to just be a rhinoceros because that's a legit sort of like, it's got one horn, sort of, two, kind of one and a half, right? But it's got one horn right in the middle of its face. It's kind of like a horse. I was never wondered why, but it's actually explicitly not. And the funny thing is, unicorn here, I don't believe the word even means like single-horned animal in Hebrew. Let's just look it up real quick. Because that's worth going there for all of our... We don't need to get into Idumea and Edom and all that. But this is definitely something you're going to want to know about. Because even as I read it, I'm like, satyrs and unicorns and dragons. It's, you see why some people think that that's literally what the Bible says. Yeah, I mean, like that's just the King James bad translation. And that's one of the things is like, hey, the King James translate. This is one of the things where the King James falls flat on its face. It includes mythical creatures when it translates things that are probably not intended to be mythical creatures, like satyrs and dragons and whatever. And what was the other one? Oh, whatever. Oh, and their land should be soaked with blood, blah, blah, blah. We'll get to that, talking about like all this sort of meaning. Reem, a wild ox. Somehow now we know. Well, we thought it was the unicorn, which sounds like ram to me, which is funny. It means to rise, a primitive root. Whatever. I don't know. That's for people who. Let's get those other ones really quick. As we look at this thing, the comma and the bidden are actual birds, but I don't like where. It might say probably the pelican. I don't know, and it doesn't matter. It's fine. The animal names here to me are not that important. The ones that are given names, the mythical ones are the ones we should look at more closely, because like I said, that's where the King James drops the ball. Dragons is usually like, it's weird. Sometimes it's like possibly, I think they say jackals. The unicorns were the dragons. The funny thing is someone has already spotted it. Habitation of dragons, verse 13. Now dragon is a serpent. So that's Tanim. Serpent, dragon, sea monster. Maybe dragons is good there. The unicorns, though, is not right. And then the last one, satyr. It's going to be like the wild goat or something. No, it is sa'ir, devil. That's not the same as another place. From sa'ar, shaggy, as a noun, he-goat. By analogy, a fawn. A fawn. Now, a fawn is rough and satyr. By analogy, a fawn, like a goat man. Right? Because fawn, I just remember that Pan's Labyrinth movie was yo soy un fawn. Fawn. And they called him Pan and all this stuff. It's weird. I still prefer goat. The wild goat of the wilderness. And same thing with the dragon. I don't really think dragon. I think serpents. Serpents mean snakes. Now, unicorns. I want the unicorns to come down. I do. I want the unicorns to come down with them. Don't you forget my unicorn. You ever heard that song? The silly old unicorns playing in the rain. They missed the ark. See, don't you forget my unicorns. Yeah. All I remember is that line. So, again, because it is the same imagery, the same winepress, the winepress of the fierceness of God's wrath, and also the sword of the Lord, and all those things combined. From Revelation, we have the same imagery. Let's just bring some of it up because it's worth to just, as we go through. What? Oh. So, 19, when the Lord Jesus appears. And I saw heaven open, and behold, a white horse, and he that sat upon him was called Faithful and True, and in righteousness he doth judge and make war. His eye and his name is called the Word of God. And the armies which were in heaven followed him upon white horses, clothed in fine linen, white and clean, and out of his mouth goeth a sharp sword, that with it he should smite the nations, and he shall rule them with a rod of iron. And he treadeth the winepress of the fierceness and wrath of Almighty God. And he had on his vesture and on his thigh a name written, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. And then here we have I saw an angel standing in the sun, and he cried with a loud voice, saying to all the fowls that fly in the midst of heaven, Come and gather yourselves together to the supper of the great God, that ye may eat the flesh of kings, and the flesh of captains, the flesh of mighty men, the flesh of horses, and of them that sit on them, and the flesh of all men, both free and bond, both small and great. And I saw the beasts, they all gather themselves together, and their armies gather together to make war against him that sat on the horse. I saw the beast and the kings of the earth. And the beast was taken, and with him the false prophet, and then he is cast in the lake, alive into the lake of fire, burning with brimstone. So we have a lot of the same kinds of imagery, the burning pitch and the fire and the brimstone and the sword of the Lord and the blood, the garments soaked in blood, the armies fighting against God himself, at least in the way it's portrayed here in Isaiah, right? Because it's the sword of the Lord. Now, how it's accomplished in reality for Idumea at that time is not, Jesus comes from heaven. But that is how it is promised for the final generation, that the Lord himself shall fight. The land shall be soaked with blood, and their dust made fat with fatness. It's an interesting thing, because when Jesus was on the earth, and people don't get this about Jesus, when he would say, he don't know what spirit you're of. And it's not that he's saying, and again, he's not saying that that's wrong. He's saying it's the wrong spirit. That's not the spirit in which this is being done. This is the spirit of humility and sacrifice we're exhibiting, not the spirit of vengeance. There is a day of vengeance. The day of vengeance is inevitable. When men are evil, vengeance comes. And men continually, though God bless us with many gifts and opens our eyes and shows us the world, reveals to us reality, we take it, corrupt it, and murder each other with it. Mankind is unworthy of the life that he's been given, and they prove it over and over again. And the bigger we get, the more calamitous. If you thought the 20th century was, this is what people don't understand. The 20th century was a nightmare in many ways for many people, millions of people who died, and we are the children of that nightmare. We exist because of it. We've often said, we're all Hitler's children, because if he hadn't killed millions and millions of people and gotten, shifted all these populations around, meaning the effect, and it's not all, he doesn't deserve all the credit for that. That's just history. But we're all the children of history in that respect too. There's a tremendous amount of bloodshed and evil that goes on. And it's like, when we continue in the same ways, the intellectual path that led to the horrors of the 20th century was of men who did not fear God. What happens when they have all the power that men cook the ground with blood? It's going to bring forth grasses. The bullocks and oxes are going to come down, and the dust of this land is going to become fat with fatness, man. I'm going to fertilize this place with the blood of all the Edomites. I'm going to make a great slaughter, and the dust of that land, which is a desolate land, shall be made fat. Because one of the things it said about Esau, your land would be far from the fatness. Birds also, the birds, there's a supper of the great God. The birds feast on the corpses, but also the land is made fertile again. And the birds come in and nest, and they hatch. I like that it says, they hatch. That comes down later. Let's see. A dust made fat with fatness, for it is the day of the Lord's vengeance, and the year of recompenses for the controversy of Zion. many of the nations around about Israel, were treacherous towards them. They had been subjugated by them in the time of David, for those who are called according to his purposes. So, I am not daunted by enemies. I'm somewhat, I know I cannot face God's enemies. I don't have the power. You know what I mean? But with God, he can make me do I can do anything. Peter could walk on water, with the Lord. He knew he couldn't do it on his own, so there were a lot of things they asked that the Lord was like, fire from heaven, get out of here. But like they wanted to walk on the water. He's like, sure, come on out. I always thought that was pretty cool. But there is a day of vengeance. People don't like to understand that about Jesus. Jesus wasn't just, buddy Christ, miss your best friend and, and hip confident. He is the Lord, and there is a day of vengeance for the controversy of Zion. The controversy of Zion, their bodies shall lie in the streets of that great city, but since evildoers often occupy that same space, every now and then they must be cleansed. And God has to take vengeance. He has to take vengeance and recompense, pay them back. What the word controversy here is precisely. Because that is it's probably actually not a bad translation, as I recall. But then again, I've been wrong. Wasn't I just wrong there or something? Yeah, about sort of dragons and satyrs. Just because they say by extension a fawn. Maybe there's some place in the Bible where it actually contextually made sense to translate it like a man with goat's feet, like a demon or something. I wonder if they translated a demon. I don't know why they would have to insert demons, because honestly, when God throws everything into the fire, there aren't demons hanging out later on, and dragons, like Satan. Demons and dragons aren't living in those places. Because it's sort of, they sort of haunt them, though, don't they? Just the way it says that they will go forth and look upon the carcasses of the men that transgressed against me. There's a sort of a remembrance. And it's a certain thing. It says they will be forgotten, but also that there's a kind of a memory. And I'm sure there's a nuance of how that exactly works. All right, well, recompenses for the contrary. Recompenses means payback, Yeah, requital, that's fine. Yeah, controversy is dispute. The dispute. There's a dispute over Zion. There's always a dispute. In the end, the Antichrist is going to stand on Zion, claiming to be God. And even if it's not literally Zion, to claim to be God is to stand atop Mount Zion. And there's no other God you can really be. Not towards humans. Because it's like the Christians and the Muslims on some level we don't agree that like Christians would not agree that the Muslims worship the same God. But they think they do. You know what I mean? And in a sense, I understand that, what if when the Antichrist appears, there's no electricity, no internet? People are so used to this information and all that, Okay. The controversy of Zion. Go back to... we're back here. I need this text up. Okay. The streams thereof shall be turned to pitch. Now, of Zion or of the land of Idumea? I think it's talking about Idumea. Yeah, the contents. Context. The streams thereof shall be turned into pitch. Because sometimes this happens around. The thing is, there will be a place of burning in Jerusalem. The Lord's furnace is in Jerusalem too, so it's not like strange for me to say. Is it talking about? Because there are times when, around. The thing is, in the end times, this is Jerusalem. This Idumea is Jerusalem, because that's the place. That's where the controversy is happening. Yeah, the Edomites were in some way treacherous and wicked in respect to Israel and in respect to heaven. But the ultimate transgressions will be the whole world. And then you have the place itself becoming, because the great white throne, it's like, do you think there's a different mountain on which the judgment's going to happen than Mount Zion itself? And where do you think Gehenna is? It's right next, it's just off to the side there. So it says in the book, in chapter 66, which we read at another time, of Isaiah 66, that they shall go forth and look at they're going to come to worship before me. All flesh will come to worship before me. And then they will go forth and look upon the carcasses of the men who transgressed against me, whose worm shall not die, and neither shall their fire be quenched. Now you look at that. It shall not be quenched. People a lot of times mistake that for some sort of like specificity of, see, it's eternal torture. It's a literal eternal torture. But that's not what that means at all. If I'm going to torture something or someone, you got to understand, you must quench the fire. That's the whole point. I must weigh the wound. If you torture someone too much, they will die. Or they will retreat inward into insanity. The human mind and body have certain responses. They say, well, they're in a resurrected body and they can't die. That's a weird thing, because it's like that's the gift of eternal life, but they portray it like a curse. When the Bible specifies that what happens at the lake of fire is the second death. And what some people have done is said, well, that's just a metaphor for eternal torment. Death isn't real. It's just a metaphor for being alive eternally and kept alive artificially so that you could be tortured some more. I don't believe that way of approaching the interpretation is got a real kink in it from the very beginning. There's something wrong there. Okay. And it's mostly because of tradition, and people defend it because they think that is the teaching of the Bible, because they've been conditioned to read the scriptures in a particular way, and they're not able to be objective about it, quite frankly. Because not just in the textual thing. Yeah, I know the text talks about things like it shall be tormented forever and ever. In chapter 20 it says Satan cast in the lake of fire and shall be tormented forever and ever. No problem, but it also says this is the second death. So which one is metaphorical? And the idea of unquenchable fire is not compatible with torture. The same idea of undying worms, also not compatible with torture, because if the fire is not quenched and the worm does not die, that means total consumption. That's what that means. The worm that is eating you never dies. Not you. The worm doesn't. The worms don't stop eating till they're done. And what I mean? They don't stop. Doesn't say till they're done, but I mean that's the implication. It shall not be quenched night nor day. The smoke thereof shall go up forever. Now that should be. I don't want to go there. I don't want to do that. What we want is just to do this. We're just going to go to Revelation 14, the easy way. So I don't have to load all kinds of internet garbage. Okay. It's going to be down towards the bottom. Wait. Or is it 15? No, No, yeah, it's 14 here in the middle. Verse 9. Well, this is talking about Babylon, the fall of Babylon, the great whore. And the third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, if any man worship the beast and his image, and receive his mark in his forehead or in his hand, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation. And he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. And the smoke of their torment ascendeth up for ever and ever. And they have no rest day nor night who worship the beast in his image, and whosoever receiveth the mark of his name. And that sounds pretty, like, whoa. But, like, first of all, the idea of smoke going up forever and ever. Smoke always goes up forever and ever. When you burn something, the smoke goes up, 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 up forever and ever. And that's actually the way that is. It means, that should be the force of it is their smoke goes up forever and ever, meaning they're finished. They have no rest. They have no peace. They do not enter into any peaceable habitation. And they have no rest day nor night. There's no like nighttime rest, daytime rest. So, well, is the rest of the grave excluded? Is the grave rest? Like I said, the smoke of their torment ascendeth up forever and ever. That doesn't mean that their torment continues forever and ever, but the smoke of their torment, like I said, this has to do with memorializing. Their smoke, the memory of them, the byproduct of their end, their judgment, remains and is always going up. But the idea that when you go to God, remember, the idea that this should be taken very literally, in a very literal way. Don't forget, remember, they were the New Testament and the Old Testament are deeply connected on a level. Like, you believe in the whole Bible, right? As the new heavens and the new earth which I will make shall remain before me, so shall your seed and your name remain. And it shall come to pass from one new moon to another, and from one Sabbath to another, that all flesh shall come to worship before me, saith the Lord. And they shall go forth and look upon the carcasses of the men that have transgressed against me. For their worm shall not die, neither shall their fire be quenched, and they shall be an abhorring to all flesh. So do you suppose that forever and ever, as there being... people often say, hell is separation from God. And, but really... the way it's portrayed is, if you take it very literally, some of this is obviously symbolic or metaphorical. Because you really think we're going to literally go out there and A, look at corpses, or B, look at people who are living corpses, like a bunch of zombies with their flesh all flayed and screaming their brains out. Oh, there's Mom, screaming their brains out with their flesh coming off and their teeth right on the grinding and weeping in their teeth, right? And we go, here, let's go to the throne of God. Hallelujah. And now let's go out back and see what's going on in Gehenna, which is right by Zion, the place of burning, the furnace. Let's go check out the furnace. Ooh, a hot time today. Look at that. Watch Hitler sizzle. Watch Grandma sizzle. You know what I mean? We're going to watch it. It says we're going to watch it. You ready? Got your popcorn? Just bring it unpopped. Bring your unpopped popcorn and let's get ready for a show. Yeah, I don't buy it. I don't buy it. I don't think that's how... there's a memorialization. But I do know this, that, the spirit that tries to say, no, they've got to literally be alive and being tortured forever. That's to me, it's like if I stood before God and told him that's what I really believed, I don't know. I would be, I don't know. I'm like, so you loved me? Out of that much fear. Because when I say I fear God, whatever, if he wants to torture me forever, okay, good. I don't, I don't know. Well, that's why they say they will curse him forever in hell. You know what I mean? And I don't get it, because it's like, there's no end to it then. It's just the evil goes on forever. It's just, we might, like, not that it's sort of evil, gets containerized and memorialized in these key moments. You know what I mean? In these moments is what I look at it. Moments that last forever. You ever had a moment that lasts forever? Sort of like that, those golden moments. sometimes they're not so golden. Sometimes they're like moments of horror. It's like, it's like Allied troops discover the concentration camps. That kind of thing. When those moments that sort of like live forever and ever. I mean, you look at, like, think about the Holocaust, just like how that's been memorialized. And some people, I'm not whatever, the Holocaust, we have photos. I mean, there's all this stuff, but is the suffering still going on? In a metaphorical sense, it is. I mean, it didn't stop having happened. Forever and ever, the Nazis stacked up those bodies, and that doesn't go away. That does not ever go away. And the funny thing is, not just that, but all the other thousands of times it's happened. Men think they will get away with it. There's piles of bodies and skulls everywhere, and the Lord has marked them all, and the Lord will have his vengeance. The Lord will have his vengeance, and righteousness will reign. So, it shall not be quenched night or day. Like it says, they shall not be day nor night. They have no rest, day or night. Their smoke goeth up forever and ever. Revelation 14. So I'd say, like, if this comes from there, well, 66 also has something to do with it too, doesn't it? I just don't like the way doctrine is made up just without reference to a lot of scripture. Meaning, there's a lot of scriptures that get left out of their assessment of what's true sometimes. Because why look for more evidence when you already have enough to support your point of view? When there's a lot of easy slam dunk verses, you can just trot out and say, try not to take this literally. Just try. I dare you to try to tell people this isn't literal. And because they pick out the stark verses where it's like, they have no rest day nor night. You ever see the photos of the victims of Auschwitz? And the eyes of some of those people? The evil is not... The wicked shall be forgotten, but their evil will be remembered. By the smoke of their torment going up, we'll remember that. We'll remember the carcasses. Cormorant and bittern. I know, there's things you could say about those birds or something like that. Oh, one doesn't have oil on it. If that's really what it's referring to, but it doesn't matter. What it's saying is, I'm going to turn the land that they inhabited into a wilderness. Yes, the wild oxes will join with the not wild oxes and the unicorns and all. We're going to run down and enjoy the fertile ground. And the birds will move in. These are waterfowl. I know that cormorants and bitterns are waterfowl. And it probably is in Hebrew too, but it's all right. The owl and the raven are not. But that's okay. But the idea is that the birds will find a place to dwell. Large birds. Here's the thing. Sparrows are all over the place. The other day I saw a big, it looked like I think a blue heron, but it was a big bird over by a creek down the road. It's a big old bird. And they go out, they like places like in the wilderness. And not that I'm in the wilderness, but it's kind of close. It's like an industrial wilderness. That's why I say people say, you live out in the boonies. It's like, no, I live in an industrial park, which is the way it feels sometimes, because of it's just massive miles and miles of corn. And it feels more like an industrial park than, but it is very nice, yes. But on some levels, it's like that. It feels like a major industrial operation. Okay, so he shall stretch out upon it the line of confusion, the stones of emptiness. I believe that's Tuhu and Buhu. Tohu and Bohu, I forgot how to pronounce them. From Hebrew. And those words, if they aren't familiar to you, let's just confirm their existence. Oh, great, Bible Hub is out. wonder if I even am streaming. Oh, I am. Yep. And for some reason, I brought up Isaiah 13. I know why. I brought up Isaiah 13 because I was going to say there was something here. Well, there's another, yeah. Satires. Same word. Is that the one I wanted, though? Yeah. A lot of similar ideas. You know, when they're overthrown. You know, when they're overthrown, it talks about giving it back to the birds and the beasts. A lot of times, you know, and also from the days of Goliath, there was a common taunt, I believe, in battle to basically tell the other guy you were going to give his flesh to the fowls of the air and to the beasts of the field. I'm going to feed you to the wild animals. By just slaying them, of course. All right, now let's see. We need to be back in chapter 34. Okie dokie. And line of confusion. Tohu. Stones. Emptiness. Form and void. And so the same language is used here. And it is, Isaiah used that exact word a couple of times. And we can, but the cool thing is we can find that out pretty easily through the Englishman's Concordance. For example, here we have Tohu, which Isaiah also uses in chapter 24. The city of confusion is broken down. He also uses it in 29. They turn aside the just one for a thing of naught, for a thing of tohu. And then 34, the line of confusion. 45 was one in particular I remember. Yeah, 45 is interesting because it says he created it not in vain. He formed it to be inhabited. That is the word tohu. In the beginning... Oh, I'm sorry. All right. These are the... I was going through the Englishman's Concordance here, and I did not realize I hadn't brought you guys along. But there we have Genesis 1:2, formless and without form. 29, a thing of naught. He uses it quite a bit, but he uses it especially verse. He doesn't like people profanely calling it the gap theory because he thinks it is. It's not just that it's a very legitimate interpretation. I think he's right. It is a legitimate interpretation that first verse and so on implies the earth had been created and it became void. That it was not starting off void or as a void. But at the same time, it does it not? I mean, that's what they believe, right? It started off chaotic. And the thing is, I think it's a thing that we see. Like, meaning this, that God creates perfection, but to man it looks like chaos. And so that's an observational thing. So when it says the earth was without form and void, that's a perspective. But what Isaiah says, he did not create a formless void. He created an earth to be inhabited. And people don't, and sometimes in the chaos of life and of the confusion of the world, we don't feel like we don't get it. And it feels like it got to bring about when it comes to Jerusalem. And so when it says he will stretch upon it, getting back to 34 to wrap things up. Sorry. There's nowhere in scriptures except with tohu, according to the... There we go. But the idea is, he's going to measure it out. Weighed in wanting. Mene mene tekel upharsin. That's what the handwriting on the wall said to Belteshazzar right as the Persians were invading the castle. And he was unaware. Fearfulness has surprised the hypocrites. People always, and then we got the nobles and stuff. We're going to have to start with verse 12 tomorrow. So thanks for joining me in this study. Look forward to being back again to continue. in Isaiah.
And mine elect shall long enjoy the work of their hands. They shall not labor in vain, nor bring forth for trouble, for they. And it shall come to pass that before they call,